Well, I'm up to something. And hopefully that something is getting this long shelved Briggs & Stratton engine working on this deck. Got the bag for it, though the bag is in pretty rough condition. I'll see if I can find a new outer bag for this. The frame's okay. But here's the engine that I want to stick onto this. This old one is a Tecumseh Vector engine, which I've only messed with a couple of these. And this one I tried to mess with a long time ago. And a couple other things ended up screwing up on it, so I just decided to not even bother with it. Honestly, even by Tecumseh standards, these things were probably the worst lawnmower engine they ever made. And, you know, they only made them for not even a few years. So they're not exactly easy to find parts for either. You could find some aftermarket Chinese crap for them. But anyways, there is a couple things I do need off of this. Being that this thing is self-propelled, it's got this bottom pulley on it. Now, this engine, how I know it's probably going to work fine, is it appears to have the same exact pulley on it. And I know this one came off of a self-propelled, I just can't remember which one I took it off of, but it should work based on the pulley size. But I do need to take out the set screw from this one and stick it into this one. I think we've got a hydrolocking oil issue, but I need to take that bolt out and put a set screw in it. So that's what I'm going to do. I do remember I did get this thing working. I think I might need to clean the carburetor out on it again. Really not a huge deal. In worst case scenario, I've got a brand new carburetor to throw into this. So I don't think we're going to have too much of an issue, but being it as it is, it's already off of the mower. I'm just going to pull both of these over to the workbench and take off what I need off of this one and put it onto that one. Then I'll probably pull the carburetor off this and give it a good once over. Well, that was easy enough. Got the old pulley too. It's always a good it's a good practice to save these, because you'd be surprised. I've got a whole bunch of these on hand, and these are one of those things that can nickel and dime you to death if you're trying to make money off any of this stuff. But there's the set screw, really nothing special, ready to go on to the other motor. And now for this piece of junk. This is what we're going to do with it. Away with you! So first order of business is to get that bolt out of there. I can't remember if I put that in there or not. I don't think that I did. But this is all you need. It's just one of these. And all that's going to do is just hold this pulley in place against the side of the crankshaft. So it ain't moving anywhere now. That's exactly it. So we might swap out this pulley. Actually, I don't think we can. Yep. So the pulley, the belt grooves, they look exactly the same. The only difference here is this is for a slightly bigger crankshaft. So I don't think we're going to have any issues, and it's good that we have this because this clearly doesn't fit. But we are going to save that just in case. So we are going to need this blade adapter after all. That's a pretty standard size MTD. It's not hard to find blades that'll fit that. I might even have one or two. But now what we have to do is mess with the carburetor a little bit. No big deal. So I'm going to take the air filter box off, and we'll get right into it and make sure. Actually, what I'll do is pull the bowl bolt off. I'm pretty positive this thing might need a good cleaning. Typically where these Briggs carburetors gum up is with this bolt. That's usually the first thing that'll plug up. And it is good. I did drain all the fuel out, but a little bit of oil that's in the motor got into the carburetor. Honestly, that doesn't surprise me based on, you know, how this thing was stored. It's been sitting on the shelf for at least a year and a half, so none of that surprises me. So I will pull this carburetor off, and definitely give this thing a good once over, probably a good cleaning, because I'm sure this oil is inside of the carburetor too. Alright, so first things first, I'm going to pull this piece of junk off. And you guys will see, that's actually a new filter that I put into this. I remember I got this thing running and then I shelved it because I think the deck or the transmission that was on the deck was screwed up and it wasn't worth fixing. So I ended up getting this thing working. For whatever reason, I didn't keep it on that lawnmower that it came off of. And I don't know if the camera's picking up the radio, but as much as I love listening to Ozzy, the YouTube police don't. Right to 3/8. These were really kind of a funky design, at least as far as these engines go. I know Briggs didn't really keep them around too long. I mean, you might be able to argue the fact that these were the precursor to the newest iteration that they have, being their overhead valve motors. I like the flathead Briggs a lot better than I do these, but these motors are a lot better than those Vector Tecumseh. I'm going to pull the fuel line back. Yeah, I do need to change out that as well. Got a gasket here. Set that aside. So there's the carb. This thing is due for a good cleaning. We'll just clean this out, see what happens out of it. These particular carburetors come apart pretty standard. You have a float pin, you have a float, and you have a needle that's going to come out with the float. That's all in pretty good condition. I'm not really worried about this thing all that much, other than the fact that there's probably oil in it. So I'm going to clean it out with the old carb spray method, and I'm going to shoot some carb cleaner into the bowl here, because that's a problem. You don't want to run that through your motor. Alright, so now to go back together, just going to finish polishing up the float here. It's good I started looking at this, because this float is actually cracked. This is not common. It's very rare that this happens, but this is definitely cracked, and we're going to have to replace that. So that's trash. It's really rare that you actually have to replace one of these floats, but it does happen. Here we go. Here's a good one. So you guys can see, I've got it labeled carb floats, and good selection of different good ones. Again, another thing that's going to nickel and dime you is stuff like this. So you always want to check over this stuff before you go back together with it. And of course, make sure your new one is in good condition as well. This one is. So there we go. Clean carburetor, and provided there's no other issues with the lawnmower itself, this should work. And so now I'm just finishing up with going back together with this. Really nothing too special going on. There's that. Filter, which like I said is actually new. Throw that back on. Don't need it to be all that tight, but there you go. So I'm going to stab this thing onto the deck and see where we're sitting with it. Just installed the motor. Belt appears to fit perfectly. And it's pretty obvious that I just cleaned all this out. So I just need to throw that little deal, the belt guard, back in place, throw that on, and I think I might have to change out to either a different adapter or a different blade. because that adapter is not going to work with that blade. That blade's in really good shape, so if I can keep that one, I will. And as luck would have it, the Horde provides a belt guard, this thing, blade adapter, fits on there snug. And we have the blade, which is going to be installed that way. And I've already checked it. This bolt should fit into this crankshaft. But you can do her nice and slow. Perfect. That's good enough for me. Let's move this mower out of the way and get some of this dirt cleaned up. Now hopefully the blade control cable that's already on this deck is going to work on this motor. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. That's promising. So now I just have to cord up. Might not be hydro-locked, so we might be good. Might get lucky and just throw some gas in her and see what happens. So I just checked the oil. It's got plenty of oil in it. So I'm going to call this machine's bluff and see what happens. Give her a few primes. I don't know what we're going to do with that situation. Can't remember if that thing was supposed to have a manual throttle on it or not. So aside from the fact of self-propel not working, this thing works pretty good. I think all of that is just residual oil that was trapped inside of the muffler. So it's going to take a little while for all that to burn off, but the self-propel isn't working. It's not wanting to engage. I have no idea why. So I just changed out the oil. When I had it flipped over, I noticed another problem, which you guys will see here. It threw the belt off of the self-propelled unit. There we go. I'm going to leave this off. I do want to clean all that crap off before I throw that cover back on. But we'll leave this off for now just so we can see if this belt's going to fling itself off again or not. was a quick and simple fix. Pretty happy with that. You guys can see how dirty this is. Let's throw this cover back on. That's good enough for me. So hopefully the next video you guys see of this thing, it's going to be all cleaned up. May have a new outer bag. And looks like we're leaking a little bit of oil out of the air filter. That's probably residual crap that was in the PCV line, at least when the mower started running and obtained its normal pressure, operating pressure. So it's not a huge deal. I'm not seeing it puff out any more smoke, so it's not getting into the carburetor. Like I said, it's probably just leaking out. So anyways, boys, if you guys enjoyed this video, stay tuned for more. I'm just really happy that I've finally moved this thing off the shelf onto a deck that it'll actually work on.